Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we are very pleased you have joined us for our two-day Metal and Mining Conference. Our next presentation is from Rackla Metals. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for a one-on-one meeting by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Simon Ridgway, President and Chief Executive Officer of Rackla Metals, which trades on the TSXV under the symbol RAK. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Greg. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm going to present Rackla Metals, and it is exploring in the Tombstone Gold Belt, which is located in northern Canada, in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. Rugged terrain, excellent potential for discovery. That's why Rackla's there. Forward-looking statements, there will be a few, so be aware. So this is part of the Tombstone Gold Belt. It spans actually from Alaska, which is not mapped, all the way from Dawson City, all the way through the Yukon, and then turns south on the eastern part of the Yukon into the Northwest Territories. This line here, that with my mouse, if you can see that, is the border between the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, which I'll refer to as MWT from here on. And over here is the border between, this is the big fault that runs through, is the Titina Fault that cuts off the belt, and it pops up again in Alaska, which is on the left side of the screen in that sort of gray-green color. So I used to live in Dawson City back in the early 90s, and I explored in the Tombstone Gold Belt at that time, just prospecting in the belt. In these little red blobs you see, these are the large intrusive bodies that can host very large gold deposits. So in the early 90s, I lived in Dawson and I prospected in the Tombstone Gold Belt. It's really where I learned to prospect, learned about my prospecting and became a bit of a financier at that time. It's when I learned my trade. Since then, for the most part, I've worked and explored in Latin America until 2022, when I was drawn back to the Yukon again by a discovery that was made by Snowline Gold, which is, Snowline has gone from probably 20 million ounces to about $1.5 billion in the last 3 years, based upon that discovery. When I lived in Dawson, it was established at the time that these intrusive bodies hosted gold, and that in the eastern part of the Yukon, they were tungsten and tin rich and didn't host gold. So in 2022, when I saw Snowline's discovery in the eastern part of the belt, I realized that old belief was not the case. I looked to the east of Snowline and saw that all of these intrusive bodies in the belt, especially the ones in the Northwest Territories, had not been explored for gold. So I read all the assessment reports and all the government data that was on these tombstones, on those Tombstone Swede intrusives, and I financed Rackla, established a camp on the North Canal Road, which is a road that stretches through the belt from Ross River into the NWT. This is the end of the road here. It was a road that was built during the war, but now it just ends in the Northwest Territories at a river here. We established a camp on that canal road and began exploring in these Tombstone Swede intrusives. We spent a couple of years, 2023 and part of 2024, looking at the intrusives by the road there. We didn't find anything too exciting. We had some interesting projects, but nothing that we got excited about. And then last year, in July of last year, some ground to the south, further south of us, came open. That was the Grad and the Olga claims. This ground had been taken out of staking for probably about 15 years by the Satu Deni First Nations and the NWT government. In July of last year, they brought it back in, opened it up for industry after land planning was completed. We looked at the geochemistry around this area and staked the Olga and the Grad claims. We went right into the Grad and did some initial work, and we're very excited by what we saw, and I'll go into that now. So this is the Grad intrusive body. It outcrops at the very top of this ridge. Excuse me, talking too much. This is the intrusive body here. We did stream sediment to confirm the anomalies that have been identified by the government. These anomalies were in bismuth. Bismuth is associated with gold in these systems that we're going to be talking about. They're called reduced intrusive related gold systems. They're often very large, somewhere between 5 and 10 million ounces. They're very simple metallurgy. They're usually open pitable because they're sitting right at the top of these intrusive bodies. So they're great exploration targets. In the Grad, we ran a talus line when we found this project. We found a talus line at the break-in slope here that you see. We sampled the talus to find out what's coming down the hillside. And here, over 500 meters, we got over 1 gram in gold falling down the hill in the talus. And we got those results back in early August of last year. Very exciting start to a prospect. The geo that did run those lines took a couple of grab samples from the intrusive itself and got some very high-grade gold results in those grab samples, up to 92 grams, over 3 ounces in a grab. So there's some very high-grade gold in the veins in this intrusive body. And it's shedding a lot, the whole hillside there is shedding a lot of gold down the hill. This is the geochemistry. This is the Grad property we just looked at. It sits on the south side of this red blob here, which is the intrusive. And this is the geochemistry we had and what brought us into this target. So we had good gold and good bismuth geochemistry. And like I said, usually with these rigs type systems, bismuth is a good indicator. So that's the geochemistry we've been chasing for the last few years in the streams. This is the cliff face we looked at. It's quite rugged. It is actually quite shattered by all the veining in it. And you can see through that whole face, the oxidation of the sulfide minerals, which would be bismuth and tellurite, and also some others. This is the line here, the different coloration on the right-hand side of the sedimentary rocks, on the left, the intrusive rocks. And this talus sample ran over 500 meters, ran over 1 gram, with a core zone in the middle running over 3 grams. So that's what we focused on, doing a little more sampling on that intrusive face last year. And this is what we got. We did a channel sample in the intrusive itself, 38 meters and 1.8 grams. And a lot of the chips we took from the intrusive, 1 to 2 meter chip samples, ran multi-gram gold also, and bismuth and tellurite. This looks a little tame here, but from where we took that sample here to the top of that ridge is 400 meters. So it's quite a steep and rugged cliff, as you'll see as we progress through the presentation. This is what the intrusive looks like. On the right-hand bottom corner here, you'll see what a regular intrusive rocks would look like, and a typical granite or diorite. This is what the granite looks like at the Grad property. It's just shattered by all this quartz and quartz tourmaline veining and quartz bismuth veining. As you can see, looking down the slope, this is where we took that talus sample at the very edge of that cliff. As you can see, it's quite shattered, the intrusive body itself, cut by this veining. There's a benefit to that. We can sample it quite easy, but it is precarious because there are rocks and talus are falling down on a regular basis, especially when it's raining. Next slide will show I'll go back one. Shows even more of the intensity of the veining in this intrusive body. So we're very excited by the results we got last year. So quickly this year, we got into the project. Unfortunately, it's a long ways north. And as you can see, it's quite a rugged mountaintop. I'll go back to that earlier picture. So, snow keeps us out of there till kind of late June. So we couldn't get working on this property this year until late June and early July this year. But what we did in early July, we got a rig on the property and started drilling. So we'll just jump to a few slides here. Apparently I can click and drag, but if I know how to, but I'm struggling. I'll just move forward to that slide. So this is the way these systems look. This is the cliff we just looked at, and where we got those talus samples and the high-grade rock samples. And that alteration zone expands all the way up to the ridge top, like I said, 400 meters vertical, and all the way down on the north face. We're getting float all the way down to the north face. It's still running good gold and bismuth numbers. So we've got a heck of a size target here. So we could spend a lot of time and money trying to decide where to drill. But instead of doing that, we move the drills in. We have a very short season, runs from early July till the end of September. So we have basically 3 to 4 months to try to prove up the importance of this discovery. Right now, we have one rig turning on the property, and we're going to stay with one rig on the property. We drilled 2 holes from this pad A, which is what I'm circling right now with my mouse. The first drill hole was 208 meters. We stopped at that point. The second hole from the same pad, this was 90-degree azimuth. This is 70-degree azimuth. We extended that hole. The numbers you're looking for here is the distance the hole went laterally, so you can compare it to the alteration in the cliff face. This was a 330-meter hole. Laterally, it went 212 meters. In both of those holes, we finished up in the same veining we've seen. So with these systems, the rig systems, you want to see the intrusive itself looks fairly fresh, but the gold usually depends on the number of veins, of small veins you're seeing per meter. And through this whole first 2 drill holes, we saw between 5 to 10 veins per meter. Towards the end of the hole, we were getting more veining, so that we will expand these drill holes as we move up across this, where we're going to drill the future holes. We'll expand that drilling. This was the 3rd hole we drilled. This hole went 420 meters, I believe, laterally about 257. And we saw alteration all the way, even though at the end of the hole, at the surface, we've seen fairly fresh rock in the granite that sits here. But where we're cutting it at depth, the same kind of alteration with a lot of veining cutting the intrusive body. So we're pretty excited by what we're seeing so far in the first 3 holes. We're presently on the 4th hole being drilled from pad B. This was A, this was C. We went to pad B afterwards because we had to building the pads to drill from at the base of these cliffs. You got to pick your time well, and it was raining pretty hard after we finished the first 2 holes. So we moved to a safer location. Now we're drilling here again. And this hole will probably extend for about 400 meters. We've got it down, I think, in the book for about 350, but I think we'll push it further depending on what we're seeing. Following that hole, we'll do another hole at 60 degrees azimuth, cutting through the cliff face again, and then we move back 120 meters. So this is the plan for this season. We're going to stay with one rig, because I think with these 4,000 meters of drilling in these holes, we will know if this system has got continuity at depth and if it's got the potential to be another snowline or snowline size deposit. Snowline is presently at about 9 million ounces. We believe this project has got the potential for that, but we need to see the continuity in the drill holes. So far we like what we're seeing, and the drill will continue to work. It's been going fairly fast on the drilling. When we've been able to drill, we've been getting good meterage, sort of 50 meters per shift. So, but we've had a lot of very rainy days the last week, I would say. And with the steepness of this cliff, when it rains hard, lots of rocks come falling down. So we really got to be careful. Once we move to the pads further to the west here, it's a little safer as we get over towards the fresher granite. But at the moment, this pad is in a pretty precarious place, so we've really got to time it well. And we've had to pull the drillers off that pad once already because the rain was coming down pretty hard and it washes a lot of rocks down the hillside. Then we move on. So that's the drilling. Let me explain how the size of the target. So we're up in the carapace of this Grad intrusive body, right where we want to be. It looks like from the height of the sedimentary rocks on the side that the sedimentary rocks have only just gone from this carapace. And so we have the whole carapace available to us, can be hundreds of meters of depth. We're getting very good numbers at surface in the areas where we've sampled. It is very early stage, but we went to drilling quickly because exploring in this part of the Northwest Territories and the Yukon is very expensive. So we really wanted to get in there and show the market and ourselves that this has got the potential to be a very sizable deposit. That's where we moved in quickly. I'll jump now to some infrastructure slide to show you where we're located and how we're accessing the property now and what our plans for the future. So this yellow stripe here is the border between the Yukon and Northwest Territories again. We are camped right now, right on that border, at a project that's called Howard's Pass. This is a lead zinc deposit that was discovered a long time ago by Placidome. It is now owned by a Chinese company called Selwyn Chiong. They have 2 camps on their project here. The project stretches for about 30 kilometers, a series of lead zinc pods. Their large camp is at the end of the road, the Don camp. We're renting a camp from them, the early camp that was built by Placidome, and it sits right on the border here. And we can drive to that camp from Whitehorse or from Cantong is a mine. It was a tungsten mine that was in production up until about 2006. And the road there from Whitehorse is about 10 hours. And then Selwyn Chiong pushed the road in all the way to the Howard's Pass deposits that they purchased. So we can drive to camp. Long way, but we can drive to camp. We camped here, and it's about 40 kilometers as the crow flies, or the helicopter, to the Grad property. So each day we're flying the drill crew, the pad builders, the geologists, back and forth from the Grad to the camp, each morning and each night. So exploration here is very expensive. If we're successful in proving up the potential of the Grad this year, we'll establish a camp right down below the prospect itself, if permitting goes well. I believe it will, because I think the First Nations, the First Nations and the government of the Northwest Territories would like to see industry in the area. That's why they opened it up. So, we're attacking it quite aggressively with the drill. Only one drill, just because of the getting into the area, the danger of it, etc. We want to go careful and yet prove up the potential of the project before we take the next step and put a large camp in. The company has got 150 million shares out right now. There's actually the warrants is wrong. I think there are 10 million warrants outstanding at 40 cents. They expire in September. When we started the program, we have 10 million cash in the treasury. We plan to spend about 5 million on this project this year. Like I said, it's very expensive exploration, but we're well financed to prove the potential of this target. Insider ownership is down to 49%. That's not just management. There's some very large shareholders that were shareholders in Snowline. A couple of people that own large positions in Snowline that have taken a large position in Rackla because they see the same potential exists here. We need to prove that potential with the drill that's turning right now, but they see the size and the alteration and the similarities of the target here. I myself own a large position, and so does Crescat, an American brokerage house based in Denver. The team, myself, like I said, I started my exploration years in the Yukon, in the Tombstone belt back in the early 90s. I then moved to Latin America and have spent the last 20 odd years working in South, Central, and North America. Made quite a number of discoveries. Founded Fortuna Silver Mines with Jorge Ganosa, the present president. I stepped down as chairman a few years ago to get back to what I love, which is this, grassroots exploration. Scott Castleman, he was the head of the Geological Survey of the Yukon until I poached him. He did that for about 7 years, but he's got 20 odd years in the Yukon territory and about 40 years exploring. Doug Murray and Armin Repin, young, energetic, very smart geos that are working with us. They're the 2 guys that made this discovery in the first place. Doug, unfortunately, moved on, but Armand is still with us, and he's actually overseeing the drill program at the present time. And Sally Whittle and Kevin have been with me for working with me for a long time. The chief financial officers, Kevin, Sally's the corporate secretary, and my daughter Amber Ridgway is the She's working with ESG and First Nations. And we have a board of geologists that have, Tom Garrigan used to be with B2 Gold, Tim Beale and David Caswell, three very experienced geologists that are advising us on the drill program. William Katzin is accountant that's helping us in many other ways. So that's pretty much it for Rackla. It's a very exciting target. The drills are turning, or the drill is turning. We'll have to wait and see. We're seeing a lot of bismuth in the core. Unlike many of the other Riggs deposits, we are not seeing visible gold in the core, but we are seeing a lot of bismuth. And from the samples we've taken early of last year and early this year, there is a direct correlation between bismuth and gold. So I'm very optimistic we'll see, when the results come out, we will see some good gold numbers. We're not going to have those results until probably towards the end of August. So by the time the results start flowing in, we will have pretty much finished the drill program. But there'll be regular news releases on what we're seeing in the core. I see I've got some minutes left, so what I'll do is try to answer some of your questions. How's the sampling at the top of the cliff on the side gone? Any assays? Assays are still pending. We filed them a while ago. They should be in sometime in the next few days, I believe, at least the initial sampling up there. So we'll see how that goes. The mapping of it, we saw lots of veining up there. We were seeing a little less bismuth than we're seeing in the core and a little more pyrite, which would indicate that we're closer to the sedimentary contact. So I do believe that the sediments were sitting on top of this ridge. I don't know when, but the intrusive is fully intact, I believe. Will another drill be considered? We won't have time for that this year. I think that the 4,000 meters we're going to drill will take us till early to mid-September, and that's basically the length of time we're going to have to test the target. That will answer the initial question for us. Have we got, is the gold mineralization got continuity that we need to see to make a mine? I think the drilling we're doing will answer that question. I don't know how to get back up to the questions that were sent to me previously. They've kind of gone, I think. Let me open it up and see. No. I was showing this how to work this previously, but there we go.
No, you got it, Simon?
I got it. Okay, thank you. Good. Will you move the rig to the... I don't think so. I think from the map I showed a little while ago on the slide, I think we'll be able to give it a good test from halfway up that ridge top. Trying to get water to the ridge top this year will be quite a challenge. Like I said, it's 450 meters vertical from the cliff. So I think the drilling we're doing this year will be a great test for the project. We don't need to, but we'll do that next year if we see the results we want. Can you mention if you consider bismuth as a sponge collector in gold, whether it's spatially associated with bismuth in the samples? I think from what we've seen today, from the results we've had from some of the float and the results we had last year, the more bismuth we got in the sample, the more gold we have, no doubt. I mean, the sample that ran 94 grams had over 2% bismuth, which was very, very high, obviously. Maybe it'll be a valuable byproduct, I'm not sure, but the bismuth and the gold are directly related. I don't think the metallurgical work, we will do some next year, or maybe over the winter time. From what I understand about these deposits and bismuth itself, it's very unlikely we'll have an issue with that. These rig systems historically have never had one. But a lot of them do have visible gold sitting on the outside of the bismuth. We don't see that gold. But I think maybe we'll get higher grades. Let's see. Do you think there's as much bismuth associated with the veins? We're seeing it in both places. We're seeing the bismuth in the veins, on the side of the veins, but we're also seeing it in the highly altered, what we're calling a very ceratized diorite. We're seeing it disseminated throughout the intrusive as well. And there'll be a release out in the next day or so, which will tell the investor a little more, and ourselves a little more about that. We're still pending a few results, but we're going to put in some news out either tomorrow or Monday, which will discuss that. Yeah, I think how significant is the 5% bismuth outside of the veins? When we're seeing the bismuth disseminating in the intrusive, we're getting very high grades, like the 92 grams we had last year. That was from a rock that had no veining in it. It had some micro fractures, and on those fractures, we're seeing somewhat of a bismuth coating, bismuth telluride, I guess. And that, so when we see that, the disseminated bismuth in the intrusive directly, we're getting very high grades. So some rocks have been sent to the lab and we're waiting results. I'm not sure when, probably a couple of weeks out. We'll have some results in, like I said, a release on tomorrow or Monday that will discuss some of the earlier grab and floats we took when we first got back into the site this year. But the cause, from the drilling, we're just cutting the initial hole 1 and 2 at the moment. If we had an issue getting a rock saw in, we had one, but it didn't really work too well. So, we're not going to be getting results from the lab from the drilling for another month yet, 2 to 3 weeks. No, sorry, 3 to 4 weeks. So we're basing our drilling on the bismuth we're seeing in the core. And another question here, could there be other economic viable metals in the core? Well, I think the bismuth, if we keep seeing as much as we are, it's very good for the gold, but maybe that is a byproduct. I'm not sure. I haven't really done any research into bismuth, but at the moment, I'm just seeing it as there's a great relationship between that and the gold we're seeing. So that in itself is pretty exciting. So there we go. I will end. There are no more questions. Olga is the last question. We haven't got there yet. I think when I just left camp 3 days ago, I was in camp for a couple of weeks. And when I left, I think the team were heading to the Olga the next day, but I haven't had a report back on what they saw there, whether that's positive or negative. And same with Baby Bite. Olga and Baby Bite have just been, I think they're visiting them now. But like I said, we've had some heavy rains the last few days, so it's kind of slowed down work on the drill and work in the field a little bit. All right, well, thank you all for listening. Any other questions, find me emails, sridgway@goldgroup.com, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much for taking the time. Okay, bye.